Cool. Right. I've been given the all clear to go. So, I'm Dan Pearce. I am the game director and co-founder at Full Cycle Interactive. This is Maskanata because I watched Force Awakens again the other day and it's really, really good. Full Cycle Interactive is a small independent game studio. We've been going for I don't know how many years. It's tough to decide for reasons that will probably become clear throughout this presentation because we kind of don't know what we're doing ever. Here is me 5 years ago at Eurogamer 2011. I'm a lot thinner and it's very sad because I hadn't seen this photo in a while. This is Daniel Scales. He's the other co-founder, also helps out at Norwich Game Festival, is also in the room right now wearing the Fallout t-shirt. Bug him as much as you can. This is us with R2D2. He doesn't work with us and he won't return our calls. And this was the first time that me and Daniel met. And we got on pretty well, we liked similar games, and we just kind of kept talking. Daniel's in a game development course. I was thinking about doing a game development course, which turned out to be a mistake. And we just kind of kept talking. Daniel started working on a game called Nanageddon, which I ended up doing the artwork for. Please don't look at this because it was a different time. And I was less mature than I am now. It was a PS Mobile title, and it was just sort of a fun thing that we did. We thought it would be cool. I was working on a separate project at the time called 10 Second Ninja, and Daniel had been testing that. We just kind of we were very indie. We were both making games, and we were talking a lot. We were just friends, and we enjoyed each other's work, so we collaborated now and then. And that's kind of all that it was. It was just kind of like hobbyist game development. But we enjoyed it so much that we kind of decided that we wanted to keep doing it and kind of make it into an actual thing. We didn't really bother with any of the professional stuff. We didn't do that thing where we go like, okay, we're going to set up this proper company structure and have all these, like, who are our shareholders? What are our demographics? We were like, let's just make games. Like, because it's fun. You can work in your dressing gown. You can have meetings in GTA Online and Red Dead Redemption. You can make games in it. And you can wake up whenever. Which sort of ties into the dressing gown things. This is the first time I've been dressed in about 3 months. And it feels really weird. And there seemed like there were no cons. Because it was just fun and playful. And we just made things. It was cool. But over time, we just kind of accidentally formed a company through necessity. We're big game fans, so when we see something like the PlayStation Vita and it looks really, really cool, we go, let's make video games for that. That sounds like a really good idea and will probably be easy. And it's not, because you have to form a company. At this point, Daniel still wasn't technically working on 10 Second Ninja, but it was testing a lot and we working on more projects together in the future. Daniel was working on a version of 10 Second Ninja for consoles, and we basically did the bare minimum required to make a proper company so that we could develop on the platforms we wanted. That was done, and basically what you're going to find the rest of the presentation through the 4 circles of hell, of which this is the first circle, is that to get to a point where you can actually make a sustainable, good, legitimate games company, this really isn't good enough. Doing the bare minimum isn't good enough. It will bite you in the ass later, and it's really difficult. And so we learned a few things. Firstly, setting up the company was kind of an afterthought. We came up with the name Full Cycle Interactive and submitted to it. We didn't announce the company until much later. We kind of just did it because we thought we had to. It seemed like the grown-up thing to do, but we didn't really understand why. Banks are really boring. You have to sit with bank managers, and don't do that ever, because they're really dull, and they think you know what's happening, and you really don't. Remember the bank thing, because the bank doesn't get sorted for a very, very long time. But yeah, we basically learned that this side of making games was what we really weren't good at. So you'd think that this would be the point where we would learn that maybe we shouldn't be doing that stuff. But we didn't. So we just carried on doing what we were doing. Any minor thing that we needed to get a game out, get a company legitimized, we did, and we did no more. We didn't understand what we were doing. We didn't do it with any kind of strong pace. Most of the stuff happened over the course of 2 years. And as a result, we're still picking apart the pieces of forming a company in sort of late 2013. But we released our first proper game as Full Cycle Interactive. Like, None Again was a different project. It was sort of like a side project. 10 Second Ninja was our first proper game. The company still wasn't announced, but everything was done through the company, and it was really difficult. This was sort of the second really big lesson that we learned, which is that, like, releasing games is really hard, like stupid hard. We worked, ridiculous hours. We had to go to events, had to do press, didn't give ourselves time to have breaks, and it was exhausting. It was really tired, and you should not organize a company that way. We were, a consistent theme of this talk is that we were very immature. We did anything that we thought we had to do immediately as we did it, and we didn't plan ahead. And I feel like that reflects in 10 Second Ninja, because it reviewed well, it sold well, and consumers liked it, but we weren't particularly happy with it. 10 Second Ninja is a kind of blisteringly fast 2D action platformer game. It was something that I'd been working on myself for 2 years. I started on it in sixth form, and then we released it in the spring of 2014. And after spending 2 years on something, releasing it, and not entirely liking it, really, really sucks. And it was purely a result of us not thinking ahead. We signed up with a publisher without really shopping around with other publishers to see what we wanted. We didn't know what we wanted out of a publisher. We didn't release on all the platforms we wanted. We released on Steam for PC and Mac, but not consoles like we were intending. We were basically just winging the whole thing. Considering we were winging it, we got surprisingly lucky. We had contacts at Sony. We had set ourselves up at a company. The bank still wasn't sorted when we released this game, so we had no bank account. We used my personal account, which is not great. It was sloppy, basically, and we thought that was good enough. Largely because it was a different time when we started making games, or we decided we wanted to start making games. And this is kind of the key. On the left is a screenshot of Been There, Done That. It came out in 2009, I believe, and it was kind of the start of this big indie renaissance. People have always been making games independently. It's always been around. You see it on PS2, you see it on PS1, you see it everywhere. We were seeing the biggest kind of indie peak since the 80s, where small teams were getting together, they were making small budget games and releasing them, and some of them were doing quite well. Some of them were doing really well. Been There, Done That did incredibly well. Thomas Was Alone, incredibly well. Gunpoint, incredibly well. But that was starting to come to an end. It started peaking around, as I said, sort of 2009 when this came out, and carried on through to sort of the back end of 2013. 10 Second Ninja launched in spring of 2014, and we immediately felt the difference. It was not polished enough. It did not look nice enough. It was not professional enough. We did not have the level of presentation that we needed. We did not have the marketing that we needed. All these things that we could have just kind of blagged our way through a few years ago, like a lot of other developers did, not to discredit the work that they did. I think a lot of the developers who were successful during this time would admit that they didn't really know what they were doing until after it all happened. You couldn't do that anymore. Steam, PlayStation, all of that was getting too crowded. Consoles were only really starting to open up, but not too many games were on them. Basically, indie was going back to what it always had been, which is not very viable for pretty much anyone. A lot of people are characterizing this at the moment as the indie-pocalypse, which is really, really stupid. The indie-pocalypse is not real. The indie-pocalypse is just a return to the status quo, which is indies not being a very viable way to make money and live your life. And we found ourselves in this weird situation where we had started this company, we already had a game out there that we were making money from, and we had plans to make more games. We already had another project that was sort of starting to be in the works. We had other things that we wanted to do, and we were faced with this conundrum where it was like, how do we compete on this level when we have like no budget, no resources, and very little experience? And what we basically ended up doing was really just getting everything together. I was about to say a swear word then, but I'm not going to do that because this is a family event. Even though I don't think there are any kids here, so I probably could get away with it. We basically decided that we need to be professionals. We looked at the games that were being successful, the other games that were coming out. Whenever we went to a trade show or like something like PAX East in Boston, we'd walk up and down the aisles and look at the games that were there and go like, what are they doing that we're not doing? What are these developers doing that we're not doing? What philosophies are they bringing to this that we simply don't have? And the scary things we realized was a lot of them had funding already. A lot of them had experience from other projects. A lot of them came from bigger studios and split off. And a lot of the games had been developed for a lot longer. So we looked at this and we basically came up with a bunch of concerns through various meetings. And we decided, firstly, we needed to announce our company properly. Full Circle Interactive. Get some branding out there, make sure people know who we are, make sure people know that we have an identity, and try not to lose what was kind of fun and weird and experimental and relaxed about what we were already doing. And that's us at, see, I told you I'd use the laser pointer. At the last Norwich Gaming Festival, just after we announced. And that was a huge step for us, sort of getting ourselves out there and going, okay, this is who we are, these are the standards that we're holding ourselves to, like, hope you like it. We found an actual adult to help us make decisions. This was huge. Previously, it was myself, Daniel Scales, who's also there, and Tim Rakowski, who does our audio and sound. None of us were really professional enough to handle the business sides of game development or be particularly forward-thinking. So we brought on someone called Becky Jassy, who's actually on the other side of those doors doing GameHub. We'd seen the work that she'd been doing with GameHub, which is a great service, by the way. We should check it out. It's sort of like IMDb for game information, like game age ratings for parents. It's really, really cool. Highly recommend it. And she was interested in working with us. We were interested in working with her. And we basically brought her on to look at the company and figure out what we need to be doing to make things work, to make things sustainable. And after assessing everything, we realized a few things. Firstly, we realized that our old publisher wasn't really what we wanted. The publisher that we used for 10 Second Ninja 1 was a company called Mastertronic, who are sadly no longer with us. And we didn't feel like we were being supported properly. So we had a bunch of updates that we'd already been doing to the original 10 Second Ninja, which we at this point decided to expand on and turn into a sequel, which is playable outside, by the way. You should check it out. Called 10 Second Ninja X, and it's a full-blown sequel which does everything that the first game did not. We're so proud of it. Please check it out. We worked so hard. We basically realized that this was our way to get our presentation up to the level that we'd been seeing. While we didn't have massive budgets, what we did have was a game that already had 2 years of development on it, and if we put another 2 years into it, it would look on par with those games that we were seeing. We could do that. So that was a big step for us, is sort of going back to 10 Second Ninja, righting some of the wrongs that we did with the first one, some of the things that made us unhappy with it, and just making everything sharper, making everything just like tighter and just feel great. And that was huge. It was scary for us because we were sick of working on the game, but we're in a point now where we're just immensely proud of what we've been doing with the game, and I really do hope you check it out after this talk, because like I feel so confident in its quality at this point, which is nice. It's a big change from the last game. We finally got the bank sorted. We spoke to an actual bank and we got a bank account for a company like grown-ups do, and it was great and really boring, and it still took ages, but it's done. And the final step was get funded. We weren't starting out with a budget. 10 Second Ninja 1 had made some money, but we needed money. We needed money really bad. Turns out capitalism's a real thing, and if you aren't part of that, then you can get crushed really easily. So we were like, okay, we'll approach a bunch of publishers that we really, really respect. We will ask them for just enough money to finish the game, and we'll see what happens. All the publishers we reached out to responded, which was fantastic. We had a bunch of meetings, we figured out who we wanted to go with, and eventually went with a publisher called Curve Digital, who are publishing 10 Second Ninja X. We're really enjoying working with them. They give us money, and they're great. But the most important thing was to figure out a sustainable way to keep doing what we were doing. If we sort of look back at the previous slide, like, during the era when this came out, most of the indie games that came out weren't successful. They'd made no money at all. But the games that did make money made loads of money, like stupid money. Like, the people who made these games are still living off the money they made from those games. Like, teams of 2-3 people making millions of pounds. It was silly, and it reflected in how many failures you got. You got so many people shooting for this who couldn't reach it, and everyone else was just plummeting. And the biggest change that we sort of have realized is we don't want to shoot for that. We don't want to shoot for loads and loads of money. What we want to shoot for is something that is stable, something that we can put out there and sort of, grow a small audience and nurture that and grow that slowly and keep making hopefully bigger and bigger projects as we nurture that audience and kind of bring it up slowly. Shooting for the big bucks out of the gate doesn't work because, like, Ark Survival Evolved exists, The Culling exists, they're going to be on the front page of Steam. There's no point going after that. There's just no point. We're going to target a niche and we're going to focus on them. And we're really happy with that because there were people who really, really liked 10 Second Ninja who wanted more of that. And going directly to them and focusing on that has felt really, really good. It's taken a lot of the pressure off. And we feel like it's a direction that a lot more indies should be looking at going forward, because that big, massive, huge, multi-million pound success almost never happens anymore, unless you make Undertale, which took a stupid amount of time and had a very, very specific cult following. So, the road ahead. We've gone through all of that, which has been exhausting. That's been over the course of about, 5 years since Dan and I met. And it's basically been us repeatedly coming up against problem after problem after problem, until I finally feel like we're at a point where we actually know what we're doing, which is really scary, because for this entire time we've been talking to other developers, and everyone seems to know what they're doing. And the funny thing is, now that I think we know what we're doing, we've basically found out that most developers don't know what they're doing at all. Like, so many people are pretending, it's kind of amazing. But, we feel confident in what we're doing, we feel confident in the game, we feel confident in our abilities, and importantly, knowing what our weaknesses are. We let things like setting up a bank account we let that process sit over 3 years. And at that point, you need to look at that problem and go, someone else needs to be doing this. We are not cut out for this. We need to find a way for someone else to solve this problem because we can't do it. And learning that's been really, I'd say, the biggest step, because there's a lot of glorification in doing it all yourself and being your own indie and, being the small, tight team who does everything. And it's ridiculous. It's not sustainable. It's not healthy. And I think you're going to see a lot less of it going forward. We're really, really excited about 10 Second Ninja X. We're really excited about working with our new publisher Curve. And we really hope you'll check it out on the show floor once this talk is done, which is now. The dream's basically the same. There are more cons, because we know what the cons are. We don't have meetings while playing GTA and Red Dead anymore. We sing Disney songs. But the important thing is we still love it for the same reasons. We still maintain this relaxed attitude, and that's been great. It still feels like we're doing what we did all the way back in 2013 when we released Armageddon, and it feels really good. I love waking up and doing this job. We finally have our dream jobs now, and so long as we can actually keep it sustainable, I don't want to do anything else. Like, it really does suck to do anything else. I like working more than pretty much anything else in the world. And that feels really, really good. And I'm glad that we didn't mess up like we probably should have. So thank you. Check out 10second.ninja for more information on 10second Ninja X. Follow us at 4secondint. And follow me at GameDesignDan. And like us on Facebook, but the Twitters are more important because I look at them more. Are there any questions? No? On indie games? Where we came from? You.
Me. What inspired you? What gave you the idea for 10-Second Ninja when you first started making it? Why did you lean towards this platformer/puzzle?
So, when we started making 10-Second Ninja, what?
Repeat the question.
Oh, yeah. So, we started making 10-Second Ninja, sort of as an experiment. I don't like puzzle games, and I don't like platformers. And 10-Second Ninja is both of those things. And I kind of designed it to see if I could make a game from a more objective standpoint. I wanted to see if I could make a game for other people, because I've been trying a lot of personal projects that all fallen through, and I was like, okay, is it going to be easier if I make a game that that I'm not emotionally attached to, that I can just give to people and that they can play and give me feedback on? Which I think is one of the reasons why when we released the first 10-Second Ninja, it felt kind of cold. And one of the reasons why with 10-Second Ninja X, I'm genuinely really, really excited by it, because over that process, I learned to love the genre in a really, really, really big way. And I feel like 10-Second Ninja X might actually be quite a good game, which is a relief. It's a real relief. But yeah, so the initial idea just came from wanting to work in genres that I'm not really a personal fan of. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you said that 10-Second Ninja X, by the end of it, almost by the end of it, you were all quite tired of working on the same game again. What stopped you from almost kind of, because you're obviously quite a creative person, moving away and working on new projects rather than actually just getting it done?
So there are a couple of things. The first thing was working on 10-Second Ninja 1, which was a game, which, as I just said, so yeah, I need to repeat the question. The question was that why did we carry on making 10-Second Ninja X when we were so sick of 10-Second Ninja 1 when we were done with it? Like, why didn't we just move on to something else? So the answer, there's sort of two answers to this. The first one is, after we were done with 10-Second Ninja 1, we had a few months away, we gave it time to sit, and when we look back at it, we realised what the game actually was and what we liked about it, and that we weren't making the most of that. And that sort of got us all inspired all over again. And that was a really, really exciting thing. A lot of that came just from like unfinished business and wanting to do right by the original vision of the game that we felt like we didn't really meet, and that's a really inspiring thing, and that's great. The other thing is that we're working on two projects simultaneously. So if we get too fatigued by 10-Second Ninja X, we go back to this B project, which is what we'll be doing sort of full time when 10-Second Ninja X is out this summer. Oh yeah.
You said that doing game design was a mistake. Why?
So doing game design was a mistake. Specifically, I said that doing game design was a mistake because I studied game development at university. I won't say which university, but I dropped out after a year because I was so sick of the course. I left, and then within 6 months, I released my first game outside of 4-Second Interactive, which was Castles in the Sky, which went on to get a BAFTA nomination. And I just really didn't feel like I needed to go back. It was just felt like kind of a waste of time to me. I was in a very fortunate position. When I was 16, I won BAFTA's Young Game Designers Award, and that gave me a lot of contacts in the games industry, so I could afford to drop out and know that there would be people who would help me find a job if I needed one, or would support me if I went indie or whatever. So I was in a unique position. I wouldn't tell most people to drop out of university. I think it's important for most people to stay in university if they need it. But I was in a very particular circumstance that meant I could drop out and it not be problematic. Oh yeah.
In your average week, how many hours do you work, and out of those hours, how much of that is coding, and how much of that is, say, design or exploring new ideas?
Huh. So, in terms of how many hours I work per week, I have no idea. It fluctuates very, very wildly. I basically work based on, but because we haven't got someone, we have deadlines that we need to hit, but we don't have like specific hours that we work per day. We're very kind of fluid with when we allow ourselves to have free time, when we allow ourselves to do the work. We try to make sure that we don't stay overworked. Like, I feel pretty embarrassed in myself if I have a night where I pull a proper all-nighter. I don't like doing it. I think it's unhealthy. I think glorifying kind of crunch culture and working 16-hour days isn't healthy. I think it's a bad thing that the industry does quite a lot. I would say that I do work about 12 hours a day, but I balance it out by when I relax, I relax big time. Like, I do nothing all day. Fallout 4 came out and I spent, I think, literally an entire week just playing Fallout 4. I had like 90 hours playtime on that in like 5 days or something stupid. Like, it was bad. But that's kind of like how we, like, but that's one of the parts of the dream, right? Like, you can afford to do that. So I'd say on average I probably work 12-hour days, apart from when I have the big breaks. And of that, I would say that very little of it is design at the moment, especially with 10 Second Ninja X, because it's a follow-on from 10 Second Ninja 1. Most of the design work has already been done. I'd say most of it is code, probably about 70% code, and then the rest of that is just artwork, because I do the art myself. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Would you say trying to get in contact with people around Norwich, such as something like Fossils or Sync Norwich, things like that, is good to try and get contacts in the industry, or to try and
Yeah, I think it's good, whether you're looking locally or elsewhere to get contacts. It's always good to network, always. It doesn't matter whether it's Norwich, but like I'm assuming you live in Norwich, and yeah, like you can look locally, and it's good to make friends and have people around who you can kind of just get feedback from. But like, take to Twitter, like go on Facebook, like someone's Facebook, like send someone, if you know an indie company that you like, find their Facebook page and drop them a message and be like, hey, like, I like your stuff. Like, just talk to people as much as you can, because it's all good. I know Mitomo's just started. You should go on Mitomo, because Mitomo is really, really good. And you should talk to as many developers on that as possible, because they will tell you exactly what kind of breads they like. Anything else? No more? Come on. You. Who are you?
You said you don't like to encourage crunch culture. Does this mean the next 2 weeks we don't have to crunch?
We do have to crunch the next 2 weeks. I don't like to glorify it. I'm not proud of it. Sorry, that was co-founder of 4 Circle Interactive, Daniel Scales, asking if we need to crunch in the next 2 weeks, and we do. I'm not happy about it. I wish we weren't in this situation, but we want the game to be good, and we have already agreed actually that like afterwards we're taking big breaks, and we've been pretty good up until this point, I think. Yeah. Yeah, we've been pretty chilled. Dan's been trying to organise the Norwich Gaming Festival as well, so he's tired anyway. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, yeah.
How's the crunch time for just up to release? How's that affected by the ability to patch the game afterwards? Do you sort of take a big break off and then go and look back at patching it, or what sort of approach do you take?
So that's a good question. The question was like, how is crunch affected by the ability to patch games after launch? And for 10 Second Ninja 1, it was affected quite a lot because we were basically making that game right up until the hour when it launched, and then we were patching every single day after it came out. It's a bit different with 10 Second Ninja X because we're releasing on consoles, so you have to submit 2 months in advance before the game can even come out, and then get Sony to go like, oh. And that means that we're forced into a position where the version that we submit to Sony, the version we submit to Microsoft, has to be good because it's the version that people are going to get if they download the game but don't download any patches on day one. And that's terrifying. That's really, really scary because it means that, like, if you need to make any tweaks to level design, you can't do that. If you need to change, like, how leaderboards you can get away with. But there's a bunch of different things in the game that you can't... Sorry, Daniel just made a face because he's doing the leaderboards. But there's a bunch of things that you cannot change after you submit, because you cannot risk someone downloading the game off the PlayStation Store and then not downloading the first update and just being stuck with this version that doesn't work. So this time, crunch time isn't affected by our ability to patch afterwards. That's why we're crunching, because we kind of have one shot at this, which is exciting. Is there anything else? You sure? Cool. In that case, I think we're good. Jason's nodding, so yes. When we sign off? Okay. Thank you all for coming. And yeah, it's been great. Follow us on things.